You joined us for Rain of Blood, and together we made it rain bigger and better than we could have ever imagined. So now, join us for a second blazing inferno of knowledge and exploration. You're listening to Rain of Fire, the scorching sequel event to Rain of Blood, where we're going to delve into the world of fire play education and safety as we prepare for the upcoming Rain of Fire event. Join your host, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and Ember Solaris as we ignite your curiosity and stoke the flames of passion with discussions, interviews, and authentic insights from around the globe. Together, we're three flames united in one mission to make quality kink education more accessible and open pathways to conversation and connection about edgeplay topics around the world. But before we dive into these sizzling topics, a content warning. Rain of Fire discusses mature themes, explicit content, and practices related to BDSM and fire play. So listener discretion is advised, and this is an adult-only podcast. Other topics may include mental health, trauma, consent, and more. So please be sure you're in a good spot to engage in these topics before continuing to listen. So, grab your fire gear, stoke the flames of curiosity, and let's embark on this crackling journey together. Welcome to Rain of Fire.
Hey, amazing fire starters. Welcome back to our podcast. And I have a really exciting human for you tonight, talking about a subject that I know a little bit more about than fire. So I'm super excited to welcome to our podcast from the UK, Nova.
Hi, I'm Kinkubus Nova, or just Nova, and I use starself neopronouns.
Nova, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we're really excited to have you on the Rain of Fire. Before we get into what you're doing on the Rain of Fire, do you want to tell our amazing listeners a little bit about your journey and how you ended up on the other side of vanilla and found kink, and how you have found fire and how fire has played a role in your life?
Okay, that's a really big question. That was like secretly 3 questions, but I'll follow it. Okay. How I first got into kink generally was online. I think I was potentially in that like first batch of people who found kink that way as teenagers, because I definitely like grew up with the internet. I was a 90s baby, and I remember like being on Tumblr specifically and learning about the kink community and bondage and all kinds of fun things, and getting into that around 16 or 17, which is a little young. But, you know, I had unrestricted access to the internet. So that's how it happened for me. And by the time I was 18, I knew that this was something that I like really wanted to make a part of my life. And so I began to seek out a professional dom to mentor me into so that I could be a dom myself. And so I was professionally trained for 2 years by my mentor. And I, after that, entered the world, entered the community physically, and started doing play. Eventually that escalated into edge play. I realized that edge play is something that I really enjoy, especially blood. Blood has always been my number one fetish, something that I found very erotic. And I've really loved my journey of learning blood play and doing that. That's been really special for me. And temperature play is also a huge fetish for me. And so that's where the fire comes in and the branding. I hope I answered that.
You answered that.
Thoroughly.
That was absolutely awesome. I was really enjoying listening to your journey. I did have a little note in my head about a comparison to when I was 16, 17. I don't even think we had cell phones. I don't even think I think when I was 17 we had like a giant cell phone. Like you needed like a separate handbag to carry it. It had like a
Oh
it
goodness.
weighed an absolute ton. It was a Nokia and it was enormous. So I was just thinking about what you were saying about your unlimited access to the internet and
Yeah.
how it's taking me all like the last 5 years of my life to get better about using the internet and about not being afraid of it. And just a little comparison about the journey. I think I only found FetLife like 7 years ago, so it's just really interesting. I have a huge smile on my face, and I'm glad that you had access to all the information and that you spend time getting to know what you wanted, and you'll
Yeah.
have more time to explore. But I did have a big smile on my face because I don't think the Nokia that I first had could even go onto the internet. So
Oh, that's funny. Yeah,
uh,
I have found that people like around my age or younger like all found kink through the internet. So I do feel like that's like sort of the standard now. But my friends and I were actually just talking about this the other night of like how difficult it was to learn about kink before social media and before the internet. Like, and
yeah,
it makes sense that it was such a like underground community before because like it was so difficult to even like know it existed, much less like learn how to do these like niche practices.
yeah, how are we alive? Like, how did we make it to old age? Because we had zero zero internet research
Yeah,
to
for
back
real.
up what we were doing. So it's literally like these for science moments where we were testing it out on each other and our friends with like no real backing or education. So definitely glad that we can leave something in this community that from a gold standard of safety. You also mentioned that you have an absolute love for blood, and I can so relate to
Mhm.
that. Like that is my favorite thing on the planet. Anything sharp, anything to do with blood. And then you categorized fire play quite interestingly in temperature play. I actually haven't thought
Mhm.
of it like that. So um, I know this wasn't one of the questions that I asked before, but could you go into that a little bit for me? Because obviously temperature play, now that I'm thinking about it, has heat and has cold. So there's different aspects to temperature play.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about your journey there? You don't have to, but I would love to find out a bit more.
Yeah, sure. Like uh I will give I will say it involves a brief mention of self-harm. So I I guess it's my interest in temperature came uh when I was a teenager, around the same time that I was learning about kink. I was also in a really bad place mentally and physically. And I was um, self harming. And I found, like, through my efforts of trying to figure out how to hurt myself, that burning myself was not a punishment. It was actually something I really enjoyed. And so that was like an accidental kink discovery moment. Um, and that sort of um, led me to a journey of like, what if I played with cold? What if, and then I would, start playing with ice and seeing like how that felt. And I really liked that too. Um, and then incorporating that into play with a partner and seeing what reactions I could get out of them with, hot wax or hot metal, or ice or cold metal, and just seeing what reactions I could get out of people, I was like, yeah, this is really fun. I love this.
I love that, and I thank you for your authentic share, and I have experienced the self-harm bit as well, so I relate to that. It was a huge exploration time in my life, and the intent behind what I was doing wasn't always good, but I have to say that it has been a catalyst in my sharps journey too. So I appreciate the authentic share and being able to hear your journey, because it's something that I have experienced as well. During the days I had a Nokia as a cell phone, but in my younger years. So yeah, you definitely making me think about my youth tonight. So you mentioned the branding, and the I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, because that's something you're going to share with us at Rain of Fire. So before I even continue on this, do you want to give us a little bit of a breakdown about what that entails and how that relates, how fire comes into that, because it's all connected to your temperature play?
Yeah. So micro branding is specifically the process of using a bunch of tiny little brands to create a bigger design. And personally, my method for doing that is I use a strike branding technique with a candle as my heat source. So I will take a little piece of wire, I will heat it up with the candle flame, and then I will press it onto the skin, and it will make just a tiny little burn, and then I will build out from that and make a whole design. And it's very fun.
Wow. And there's a whole lot that goes into that. But as a sharps player, my next question is going to be this: there are obviously precautions that you take in this practice. Do you want to discuss some of the precautions with us and just tell us some things that are important to think about?
Yeah. So personally, I think that, like, especially compared to some intense sharps play, the risk in this specific practice is a lot lower, but it's definitely not none. You are still creating a wound, even though it's a more surface level wound. And you want to make sure that everything is very clean. All your tools are clean. Your skin is clean. Your hands are clean as the top. And healing is more of a variable process. It honestly depends on what you want it to look like. There are people who like, I would say I fall into the category of people who find the healing process of burns very unpleasant. And so, like, I like to baby my brands, but that means they don't last as long. And some people who really want them to last will don't not put any medicine on them. Basically, just keep them clean, keep them dry, and let them do their thing. I would say.
Oh, sorry, I have some questions around that babying it and not babying it. Sorry, this is a subject that I'm really interested in. It's something that I've heard a lot of wives' tales. Obviously, because I grew up without the internet, I have some weird information that's been fed to me over the years. So I haven't actually been able to sit down and ask anybody. So here go the weird questions for the night. I was so obviously the skin prep is super important, and keeping anything as clean as possible for the healing process is also important. But there are ways that you can aggravate it to increase the scarring.
Yes. There are, you can intentionally aggravate it. That there's two risks that come with that. Firstly, you can have a higher risk of infection if you are intentionally aggravating your scar. And the second thing is you risk the integrity of the design if you are constantly reopening that wound, and you can risk getting more scar tissue than you intended, and having the design not look as clear as it did initially. So personally, I don't recommend it, but I have heard of people like rubbing dirt or rocks on it to like keep it really irritated, so that it will scar more heavily. Yeah, personally, I don't recommend that, but people can do what they want with their bodies and their own risk profiles.
I was going to say it's all about your risk budget and what you're prepared to spend. I haven't heard dirt and rocks, but I have heard salt, that if you rub the wound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So not that I like to baby my wounds as well, and I'd like to not scar. So mm-hmm. I only have so much canvas, and as I get older I've used a lot of it. So I need to make sure that my canvas is as in a good condition as possible. So it's definitely not something for me. I just wanted to clear that up. So going into branding and looking at a branding play with somebody, how do you make sure that it's done in a respectful and consensual manner? What are sort of green flags for you in a negotiation context?
Definitely someone who seems excited, and that's just like universally applicable. Someone who's excited about what we want to do is like a huge turn on for me. So that's like my biggest flag, is someone who's like, I really want to do this. And wanting to be involved in learning about it. Someone who is not just like, oh, you want to brand me? No follow-up questions. Which like, maybe if I know that this is someone who has like been branded a bunch of times and they like get it. But if this is someone that's like, this is play I've never done, it's unlike any play I've ever done, it's brand new to me, but just do whatever you want to me, daddy. I mean, cute. I love the submission, but I would say that's not the greenest flag. I would like someone to be, be like, okay, what does that entail? What exactly are you going to do to me? How do I heal it? Caring about the process and what's going to happen to their body.
Yeah, and I think I've just got a bit old and grumpy and jaded in my journey, but I want somebody who is putting in their own research and who's coming to me with questions that are that show that they are taking the process seriously. I've got past the idea of this, enthusiastic devotion with no self-awareness. I think especially in sharps for me, because it can be more risky than certain other plays. It's definitely edge play for me. Fire falls into the same category, and I think branding is a mix between fire and sharp. So you've got the best of both worlds there. There's a self-awareness and accountability. And I think when somebody comes to me with decent questions where they've actually considered it, they've considered that they might not be able to wear shorts for 3 weeks, or that this has a lasting effect. It's not something that's going to be over in 20 minutes and they're going to carry on with life. There are consequences. I think that accountability already starts there, because stuff goes wrong in every play. Like, nothing is perfect in life. So knowing that you've considered the risk profile of the kink that you're participating in on your own without me spoon feeding you is really those are like a green flag for me. They really tick my boxes. That that you said, the daddy just take me thing. It's like, mistress, do anything you want to me. No, thank you. I'm good. Like, it's nice and that's sweet, but tomorrow morning when you wake up with regret, I don't want to be there. So I
exactly.
Totally,
and that's what I worry about.
And you have every right to worry about it. And I can tell you that it's going to happen if they're not taking responsibility when they wake up and realize what they're doing. But it's also, for me, it's not just consent; it's informed consent. And I also feel like you have the autonomy to get your own information and then bring it back to me. And the more I play in kink, the more I love the players that I can collab with and that bring the information to me. So the scene is enriched and it gets bigger and just more fun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I really like that. I thought that for a youngster, that was with some great points. I'm teasing you about your age now because you made me feel old. So
you're fine. No, I know. Like, it is funny because I feel like I'm in my late 20s and I do feel like I'm starting to get at that point where I'm not one of the youngest people in the community anymore, which sometimes makes me feel old. And then I remember that like there's people who've like been in this community as long as I've been alive, and I'm like, never mind, I'm not old. And that's great. I hope to still be in the community 20, 30 years from now as well.
I think it fills me with so much hope. One of my admin members that is part of my team for both Rain of Blood and Rain of Fire is Radically Dark, and they're quite young. They're very young, and
they're younger than me.
I'm always filled with awe at how responsible and how educated they are, and how much time they spend on educating themselves. And I get the same feeling with you speaking to you tonight that there is that you've really done your homework. And I think it's for an old house cat in the community, it's really cool to see the newbies or the youngsters doing that research. And it fills me with such hope for such exciting things to come, because I think that your kink journey is just going to be amazing. So branding's quite a hot topic. Have you faced any challenges or misconceptions about branding, and how have you dealt with that?
Personally, the biggest misconception that I feel like I've encountered is people assuming that branding means iron branding, like what they do on cattle or what has historically been done on slaves. And I feel like most people who are like not into like extreme body modification, that's like the only kind of branding that they know exists. And so that's just a matter of being like, no, it's not like that. There are people who do that. It's not very safe. I personally use a type of branding called strike branding, where you heat up a piece of metal. And I actually use a subtype of strike branding, which is micro branding, which is where you just do tiny, tiny little burns and then it looks cool.
I didn't ask you earlier, but how long, if you treat it well and you look after it well, how long does a brand last for?
It really depends on your skin.
Okay.
For me, I don't hold on to scars very long. I've given myself like 5 different micro brands over the years. And other burn scars I've done, like cigarette play and stuff like that. And I don't have any of them. My most recent one was probably from a year ago and it's gone. But that's me. Some people scar, like they'll pop a pimple and have that scar forever. So it really depends on your skin a lot. I've also read some research that suggests that the more melanin you have in your skin, the more sensitive you are to scarring. So that is also a factor. It's very variable.
That's so interesting. We did a small hook pull with 3 girls, and we all had 3 hooks in our breasts, and we pulled against each other, and we if I just look at the comparison between the three of the three of us, like mine are tiny little dots and you can barely see anything, and there was zero bruising and I was almost 100% fine. Like I didn't even notice them the next day. And one of the girls, the other girl, was also reasonably quick to heal, had a slight bruising but hardly anything. And the third girl had quite intensive bruising, and had to actually put a plaster over and really do wound care and aftercare. So I think you're definitely right about the different skin types, and knowing what works for you, I think is hugely important going into it, because as the top, you don't always know what the bottom needs. So the bottom needs to come to the party with how they're going to treat it, because obviously, as much as you'd love to be there feeding them strawberries for the next 6 weeks and treating their wounds, that's not always possible, because you have a real life and you have to adult and stuff. It sucks. But yeah. So that information from a bottom perspective, I think, is really critical in taking personal responsibility, because I think anything in edge play comes down to personal responsibility too. So I really like that. Yeah. I wanted to mention something you spoke about, strike branding. I think we have a very farm orientated town in one of our little provinces, and it was a cold, rainy night, and there must have been 20 farmers sitting drinking whiskey at the bar, and they had a whole bunch of brands above them, and the guys were like, "Oh, I'm gonna brand you," and the guy was like, "Yeah, that's such a good idea," and the next guy was like, "Yeah, have a drink," and then they all got together, and I watched grown-ass men brand each other with proper cattle brands at like 1:30 in the morning, and they were totally slaughtered. And then I did see them the next day. None of them were sitting down. None of them. They were all standing up. None of them were sitting down. And I have to say, I don't think they sat down for a while after that. So I have seen the proper branding. It's insane, and it's not something that I suggest you do unless you're at some dodgy pub with a whole bunch of farmers drinking whiskey. But I've actually seen grown-ass men agree to that and think it's a great idea, and do it one after the other to each other with varying consequences. But so
goodness.
I do think the branding that you're talking about is an art, and that it is really something creative, and it can really be empowering. I also think the one thing that I've learned through my journey is that the treating of a wound, and that journey it's a journey on itself, and that can also be incredibly empowering. And for me, it was the start of my understanding what I needed for self-care, is understanding how to look after my wounds and how to respect my body and how to just give myself the care that I needed, and allow myself to be entitled to that care. So it was really quite a catalyst for me kink has been quite a catalyst for me in my self-care journey, and I'm definitely a better human because I've learned to take care of myself and put myself first a little bit. So
that's great.
Yeah. I think that anything that produces something like the brand, where you've got to look after it and you've got to pay attention to it, can be quite a beautiful, empowering thing for the person afterwards. And it's quite a personal journey. So I really love that. So how do you ensure that this is consensual? And respectful? What is important to you in your negotiations?
I do think informed consent is the leader there. I like to make sure that the bottom understands, like, this will scar. Like, this is potentially permanent, depending on how your skin reacts to it. This will be on your body. This has potentially life-lasting consequences. This is how I'm going to perform the practice. This is how you can care for it. This is the design I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to put it. This is when we're going to do it. And that can be a collaborative process. Like, if if the bottom has input in that, which they usually do, because it's like a permanent body modification, potentially permanent, and they tend to have opinions about where they want it and what they want it to look like. And I love having that be a collaborative process, because for me it's definitely not a like slave marking thing. That is play that other people might do, but for me that's not part of it. This is something that I enjoy as temperature play and as body modification, and so it's definitely, I love it being a collaborative process, and I love it being something that the bottom is really happy with.
I love that. I think it's a bit of a creative process where your canvas is a bit 3D and can talk back to you.
Yeah.
And I love it when the canvas is happy too. Like, it's really important that I have a happy canvas on my table than an unhappy
Exactly.
canvas. It just makes the whole experience so much more pleasant. Are there any significances of these practices in the broader context of body modification?
Yeah, I would say there's like two things to be aware of, is which are both like honoring the history of human branding. Firstly, it is a very ancient and very sacred practice to a lot of cultures. And so, like, that is something to acknowledge, is that this is something that humans have been doing for potentially millions of years, definitely thousands. And just acknowledging the significance of that history. Also, there's a less exciting element of how human branding has been used historically, which is slave marking. And especially if you are a white person who is wanting to brand a darker skinned person, and especially if master slave dynamic is something that you're wanting to play with in this practice, you really need to acknowledge that history.
I love that. And I think the one thing that I've learned from all the body modification stuff that I've done is appreciation over appropriation every time. Understand where the history is coming from. Appreciate the people that have done this before you, because those are your educators, and you can learn such an enormous amount from them if you show them respect.
Exactly.
And that that somebody else is going to look at the work that you're doing, and it's also going to be viewed in context. So your reminder about the traditions that aren't so great are really important, because everybody's going to have a different context and the perspective that they view the work. And it's important that you've considered that, because the person wearing the brand afterwards has to deal with that too. So I think that's a super great point to raise. And so for me, it's always appreciation over appropriation. Understand why you're doing this. Is it important to you? Can you deal with everything that the history relates to? And are you happy to bear that scar, in that context? I think is hugely important. Yeah, that's super cool. For a youngster, I'm super impressed. Like, I don't know if I could ask half my friends these questions and they'd be able to give me such educated replies. It really just it makes my little dark heart so happy to know that we've got a whole bunch of body mod guys coming up that are going to be awesome. So how do you take this education forward to informing others about microbranding and fire play in order to lessen stigma and misconceptions?
I do feel like when I encounter people who are like, yeah, what is that? It comes from a place of, well, I would never consent to being burned. That's scary. And so I think consciously or subconsciously, the thought there is that there's some sort of non-consent happening there, that, you know, this brand is something that I'm forcing onto somebody, or is being forced onto me. And I definitely understand that, because there is a history of that. But I do find that when I just go like, this is a form of body modification, it can be like really liberating. The process of it can be very fun, and the end result can be like very positive in like making me feel like happier with my skin, of getting to see this like beautiful design that I put into it. And I just feel like once I explain like that element of it, of like, it's consensual, in fact it's like very positive, it's not just used as a form of torture, which like I've never done a scene like that. I'm sure you could, but that's not my deal. But I do feel like when I share that perspective, people are like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, just giving them a different context and just giving them a different perspective sometimes is helpful. I think that the stigma around all body modification has lessened in the last couple of years as well, and people are much more accepting. And I think the thing for me is that, you know, it's not this rash decision that my bottom and I are making in a split moment. There is a lot of planning that goes into the situation. There's a lot of care going into it. It's a request. And, you know, I think people are also starting to understand more that pain can be pleasure, and that you know, people see that more clearly than they did 15 or 20 years ago, you know, and they're more accepting of that. And I think that once you as a top have played with somebody who honestly sees pain as pleasure, because it's not everybody's cup of tea, being able to give your bottom that pain is such an exhilarating feeling, because you're really fulfilling one of their deepest desires. And I think that is a beautiful gift. It's a privilege to be able to give somebody what they really want. So yeah, when I discuss it, I always say, you know, the intent is to fulfill a desire that's really a deep need, and you know, this is what this person really is asking for. It's not something like you said that I'm forcing on them. I just go back to the picture in my head of these naked bums with these guys so drunk branding each other. Like, it's nothing like that. It's something that's so carefully planned out, and it's really beautiful. And I think there's an art in it as well. And I just think that there's beauty in creating art off the one canvas that everybody has, because it's, for me, working with a canvas that is attached to a human being makes my art 3D. So it's an absolute gift for me. Okay, so before I ramble on like an old woman, what advice do you have for individuals who are interested in exploring branding for the first time?
Honestly, I would say that the technique that I use is very accessible. Or just strike branding in general is pretty accessible, though I would say that micro branding is easier technically. But I'll back up for a second and explain more about what those terms mean. Strike branding is when you heat a piece of metal and press it to the skin, and micro branding specifically is when you use a very small piece of metal and build out from there. And the reason that I think that micro branding is easier is because you have more control over the design. If you are using a bigger piece of metal and you don't line it up correctly, you can't do much about that. But if you don't line up two tiny dots perfectly correctly, you can just put a third one in between and it looks great now. So it's a lot easier to control the design with a smaller surface area. And that's why I recommend it for beginners. And, you know, most people have a candle in their house or can easily access one. And you can, so just like a little piece of wire, you can get that at most places. And a candle, which you can also get at most places. And that's all you need for the actual process, then obviously you also need like safety supplies, which are pretty accessible at pharmacies, and hopefully you'd have them anyway. So
I really like that. Have you ever tried a hand poke tattoo?
yeah, I haven't done hand pokes tattoos before, but because I actually have a needle phobia. But
Oh my gosh, really?
yeah, I do. like really bad. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how they like how the needle phobia it affects so many people out there? It is incredible.
Yeah.
I just would imagine with your precision, it's something you'd be super good at. And we do
Yeah,
quite a lot of.
I was comparing the two the other day actually of like it's a very similar process, a hand poke tattoo and a micro brand, specifically with the method that I use. You can also do like cell popping is technically micro branding, but I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, and you were speaking about how you line up the dots, and we do
Mhm.
quite a bit of we're learning quite a bit about bloodlining with the hand poke tattoo, and it's
Yeah.
incredible because you can create the art and it lasts. It doesn't last long on my skin at all, unfortunately, but it can last for up to like 6 weeks on somebody, so you can create something that they can live with for a bit, and it's a really fun process, but it's very similar to the process that you're describing. It's just a series of dots and lining them up, and it's really nice because in the beginning you don't have to be 1,000,000% accurate. Sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place because I'm quite excited about your topic, so I do apologize for me jumping everywhere. Do you use a stencil when you do the brand, or is this something that you're doing freehand? Is there a process of putting a stencil on, or not at all?
I don't personally, but you definitely can. I would say it's easiest to mark either with a like surgery pen or with a burn, like where your general design is going to be. Like if you were to do a star, to like do a burn on like each of the corners, so like the outer ones and the inner ones, so that you can like follow those and connect them with the lines. That will help you like make your design look how it's supposed to look instead of just like fully freehanding it. Because I personally, if I were to fully freehand it, it would look bonkers, which maybe the person wants that. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not the best at like totally freehanding it, but I generally will either mark with a surgery pen or mark with burns and follow those guides.
Okay.
You can use like a physical stencil, like something I don't even know what you would do with that, like sanitized plastic maybe, and like wrap it around.
Yeah, I heard so the rumor has it in my community. I'm sure the top who told me this is it's gonna phone me tomorrow and tell me that I should never have said this on air. But that if you take Kitty's hairspray, because it's got alcohol in it, and you take like a stencil, you can spray the mark onto the body, and then you can go over that with the micro branding. And that works really well because it washes off easily, and it's apparently the alcohol in the hairspray is meant to help the situation and help with disinfectant. My sharp's brain has a bit of a problem with that. I'm not sure. Like I totally align with that, but
that scares me a little bit. But if that's in somebody else's risk profile,
yeah, no. I have never approached it because when the situation was explained to me, I was like, That is amazing. I'm so glad somebody else said yes to that. It's a no from me. Like it's a resounding no at this point. I'll think about it for 5 years and come back to you.
Yeah.
But I did see a stencil that they'd done like that, and it was actually, the end result was actually really beautiful. It's a bit controlled for my type of play. I also like to be expressive, so the idea of taking somebody else's stencil and spraying it on and then copying it is like coloring in the lines. I'm not really good when you put that much control in my life. Like I feel like you're really trying to curb my enthusiasm, so it wouldn't be my choice. But interesting. I also use a surgical pen, and I assume that you could probably use the tattoo trace paper that we use for tattooing. I think that could also work.
Those setups are kind of expensive, so I wouldn't buy one just for this personally. But like, if you are a tattoo artist and you already have one, like, hell yeah.
But you could do your tattoo and the tattoo art. Like I see a lot of the Americans with their like little hand printers and stuff like that. Like you need to come to Africa. We'll teach you our ways. Because if you draw your design on a piece of paper and then put it on a piece of carbon paper and trace it over on the carbon paper and then put a bit of tattoo stick on the skin, you'll get the trace down almost perfectly, and you don't need a fancy printer or anything like that. You literally just need a piece of carbon paper. So it's really simple, easy.
That's handy. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, trust us, we're from Africa. We can make anything work.
Hell yeah.
Where do you see the future of branding going? Is there something bigger coming for you in microbranding?
I'm not sure. But whatever it is, I'm excited about it.
I love that.
I definitely would like to do more. I'd love to do bigger pieces. I'd also like to do other types of heat and fire play, for sure.
Awesome. And great answer. I'm also excited about branding after speaking to you. I just want to go burn and brand things. And then is there any specific project that you're currently working on?
I'm not, but I guess sort of piggybacking off of the last answer is I'm definitely enthusiastic about always learning more. I always want to expand my knowledge on in general, but also specifically in kink and specifically in fire and temp play. I want to do more always. I definitely want to get a carterizer and learn more about cartery branding. That is probably going to be the next step in my branding journey. I also want to do more wax play, maybe fire massage, fire knives, fire impact. I'm excited about learning all kinds of stuff.
I love that. I saw some cautery pens, but they're like you probably have to sell a kidney, I think, to afford one of them. But they've got the most beautiful points on them. The proper pens, not the mole removers, but the proper pens have a really beautiful fine point on them, and I think you could do some absolutely incredible work with something like that. I also see them every now and again when I shouldn't be shopping online, and I do stop to browse for a split second and then turn the page and think it's not an investment that I should be making this month. I need to move on.
That's where I'm at right now, of like not quite ready to get one. But it's on the list. I think that's my next step in my branding journey, and I'm not quite there yet, but it's there. It's waiting for me.
I'm so with you, and I'm watching with absolute joy to see what comes out of that, because I've seen some beautiful work. I do quite a bit of CBT. I saw a really beautiful guy's cockhead that was done with a cautery pen, but like just really fun, almost like lace around the edge of it. It just looked absolutely phenomenal. It was just really, really, really elegant. It was really beautiful. And I think that's the one thing with fire or with heat, if you can really control it to the degree that you can pinpoint it like that, it's just, you can create some really amazing designs. So yeah, I was a bit taken with that. My CBT slave was like, hell no. I was like, it's in your future, don't worry, it's coming. I see great things for you, and it's not going to hurt me at all. And we getting back to Rain of Fire. You're going to come and host a class for us on micro branding. We're really excited. Yeah. What do you want to give us a little bit about what we can expect?
I'm gonna go over like pretty much how to do the entire thing from start to finish. So like how to set up your area, how to perform the branding, how to heal, like what to talk to your bottom about before you do it. Fire safety a little bit. I don't go too much into fire safety because I work with like one candle, which is like not that intense. But yeah, I'm hoping to cover all of it.
Yay, we are so excited. I'm really excited about the branding. Can you tell?
Yes.
That's my it's one of my classes I'm looking most forward to. So thank you so much for your time, and we are so looking forward to having you, and we can't wait to hear your voice on Rain of Fire. And thanks for tonight. I really enjoyed this chat.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me.
And to all my listeners, we are getting closer to Rain of Fire and to some awesome classes, including this branding class. So we hope you guys have got a ticket. We hope you guys are getting as excited as we are as we get closer and we start counting down the days. We're nearly there. And if you don't have a ticket, I don't know what you're doing with your life. If you need help getting a ticket or you need a scholarship, we have scholarships available. Please reach out to us. Just DM the team and we'll hook you up. We want everybody to get as much education on this amazing medium of fire and to be able to take it home and explore with it a little bit more. And to all my listeners, and lots of love and kitten kisses from my dungeon to yours.